My name's Sasha Pete, and I'm joined by a fantastic individual. This man will be well remembered as a Socceroo and having played for Brunswick Juventus of Preston, Macedonia. So the 1987 Player of the Year, welcome, Andrew Zinni.
Thanks, Sasha. Nice to be here and actually nice to be remembered. So there is someone that still remembers me, which is good. Thank you.
Oh, no, you're welcome, sir. So tell us, Andrew, how did you fall in love with our great game?
Well, it goes back to when I was a very young kid, and I would go along to watch with my father. I'd go along to Olympic Park and watch Juventus. So as a kid, I grew up with black and white stripes. So I developed a love for the game as a very young supporter of the local game here. And yeah, I suppose always aspired to wear the black and white. And that, I suppose, is part of my story.
Oh, fantastic. So, given your vintage, you were talking about players like Dino Di Marchi's. Who else did you sort of look up to?
Yeah, there was Dino Di Marchi, Stan Webster. There was a keeper called Harvey. There was Pat Della Rocca.
Yes.
Sonsini. There were, just all the what I call the classic players from the late 60s, early 70s, who I always looked up to, and ultimately got to meet. And in a funny sort of way, the roles reversed, and they ended up coming to watch me play. So for me,
that's brilliant.
Extremely gratifying. But
tell us about your first junior club. Who'd you first kick a ball for?
First junior club was just a local club. I grew up in Elwood, little place there. Mum and Dad got married in 1960, married in Richmond. They met here in Australia, obviously of Italian background. So in Elwood, there was a club by the name of Melbourne Hungaria, who forms the fabric of our game here, particularly in Victoria. Even in Australia, I mean, it produced some fantastic players, and Atia Bonyi was one of great note. So locally, I played in Elwood, where Melbourne Hungaria was based. I started off as about a 7-year-old, 8-year-old, played a year ahead of my age, and coincidentally, Mike Peterson, Mickey P, who we all know, joined the club at exactly the same stage as I did, and we played a year up for a number of years, and that's where we developed the love for the game. We had a fantastic coach by the name of Leif Jensen, a Danish fella who really made us fall in love with the game and enjoy playing. And I think that sort of foundation of enjoyment was really what certainly kept me interested in the game. And then the quality of the team we had was exceptional. And I had, a teammate in Mickey P, who's probably one of the most creative midfielders this country has ever produced, supplying me balls as a kid, and and did for many, many years thereafter, So, so a great introduction to the game.
So, so Mickey Peterson, so Crabber, like he could ping a ball from the centre of the park, obviously, 20, 30 yards and hit you on the chest. Could he do that as a young boy as well, just find feet or find you in space by lobbing that ball over and just being pinpoint on his passing?
Yeah, Mickey had this innate ability to control the ball with one touch, look up and ping a ball 20 metres, 25 metres, straight to your feet or into the space. He was able to do that as an 8-year-old. And it's incredible how that part of his game really never changed. You watched him playing for Brunswick or for South Melbourne or even for the national team. And that simple one touch, look up, ping a ball. he had it from a very, very young age. And you know, people say, can you teach that sort of stuff? When you look at a player like him, I don't know that you can actually teach it. I think it was just innate.
Part of his DNA. Yep.
Yeah, look, you can teach it. There's no question. But if you do it innately and have got a natural ability to do it, you just progress with that ability that much quicker and that much further than anyone else. But with Mickey, another thing that didn't change was just when you'd see him walk into the dressing room and you'd look at his face and you'd tell by the sleep that he had whether or not he was going to perform on the day, you know. And, you know, Mickey on his day was, as you know, as we all know, probably the greatest distributor of the ball.
Yes.
One of the greatest distributors of the ball that this country's ever seen. And that was linked to the way he slept the night before.
Oh,
so
well
if he walked in the dressing room and his hair was all ruffled and he had the sour look on his face, you know he was in for an absolute shocker. But in most cases, he was attuned, he was ready to go, and he'd have a blinder.
Yeah.
So again, much the same when he was late, you know, much later in his career, you'd be able to tell just by the way he'd walk in the room whether he was going to have a blinder or not. So again, something that's innate.
You played for some other junior clubs.
Yep.
So it was Melbourne, Hungary, and then after that.
Yep, we went then. So Melbourne, Hungary, basically folded when we got to the age of about 13, and Leif Jensen took that team, which was a very, very successful junior team, took it to what was then Harcoa St Kilda, and we had one more year together. And again, unfortunately, that club folded. And albeit we did have a very successful year that year as well. You know, there was myself and Mickey P pretty much left. The rest of the boys went and kept playing their age group at other clubs. And Mickey and I looked around, and we had always admired the team that was at Port Melbourne, who were actually playing in their own age group. They were playing. You know, we were playing 4 teams. They were playing 13s. We decided to drop back to our normal age group and join this super team, who was very, very successful in their own age group. And again, a lot of family favourites there, a lot of household names there. There was Mema Jurakovic there. There was Aki Kotsumakalis there, who we all know. Joe Palatzidis was there. Peter Tsalakis was there. Steve Hackett, who had some years in the NPL as well. An incredible team, and we joined that team and had an incredible amount of fun. The camaraderie was incredible, and obviously we had a great deal of success. We had some terrific coaches there. We had Stan Hackett, who was actually Steve's father, who had a career in his own right. He was a guy that, you know, was able to harness the ability there and just give us a bit of discipline. And you know, he continued to instill in us the enjoyment of the game. We then, I think Stan coached us for 1 year, and then Mickey P's father took over. So Hans Peterson took over. And he was an absolutely exceptional coach. Obviously, the Dutch background, the pure football, that was in his blood. And, you know, he taught us, you know, all about, again, enjoyment. But even, you know, at the end of certain games, he would say to us, boys, freeze the game. And we'd get in the corner of the pitch and basically play keepings off for about 10 minutes. And that's literally how it was, because he was all about possession and, you know, and getting the win and securing it and then having fun. So
you'd be up again by a couple of goals and then go.
We might have been up 3, 4, 5-0 and okay. So boys, freeze the game. And he'd want to see from us for, play a box game, the last 10, 15, just hold possession, hold possession. And that we did, and with those quality of boys, needless to say, it wasn't that hard, you know.
It's unbelievable the amount of NSL star that would go on, NSL stars, people that represent the country. It's like you guys would have been formidable.
Well, the interesting thing was that although myself and Mickey P made most of the state teams as juniors, the under 13s, 14s, 15s, etc. These boys, your Pallas and your Talakises and Mem, Aki, I think Aki was actually playing up a year. I think he made the state team for his own age group, but none of these boys ever made a state team. But they had this incredible ability, and I think what really held them back was that they were smaller than most of the other boys. Tactically, technically, no question, they were brilliant. But as a lot of us see in the junior ranks, when you've got a physique, you've got speed, you're strong, quick, etc. It often overtakes the smaller boys who are highly skilled.
Yes.
But the message there is that you never give up. And what these boys didn't do is they never gave up. They believed in themselves and they kept working at their game. They kept believing that they were going to make inroads into a career within this country, and that they did. We although Mickey and I were I suppose we were a bit bigger and had other physical attributes. These boys technically were just brilliant, and when you see the likes of Mem and Peter Talakis,
quality.
and Pella, just quality players, and they've left their mark on the game here, and deservedly so. They were brilliant from a young age, but they never had the chance to represent their state at the highest level as sub-juniors.
Yeah, well, it goes to show. So probably a message for parents and kids watching this, if you're small in stature, it all catches up. Once you guys turn 16, 17, 18, 19, the body shape will so. But if you're a bit smaller at the 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old mark, just stick it in there. And water finds its level. Fantastic. It's really good. Now, I think you made your senior debut for Brunswick before your 18th birthday.
So because we were such a successful junior team, we attracted a lot of attention, and we'd actually have our own crowd. So each weekend we'd have, we'd pull. We're not pulling thousands of people, but we're probably pulling, a couple hundred people.
Yeah.
And word getting out, this team plays really good football and some, really talented boys there and stuff. So the results obviously got around the soccer fraternity, and we attracted coaches from the local leagues and the state league, and there was Tony Bodgie, who was the Juventus coach at the time, senior coach at the time. He'd often come down and watch us play, and he approached me after a game that I played pretty well, and he said, look, I know you're young, I know you're at school, I know you're a keen student, but I'd like you to come and join us next year and train whenever you want. There's no pressure on you. I just want to take you under our wing and see where it goes, So I was fortunate enough to, during my HSC or Year 12 year, although I had other responsibilities at school with other, representative roles that I had, I was able to train whenever I wanted with Juventus. So I would go there maybe once a week, and on a particular weekend, I think they were struggling with numbers, and he said, look, do you reckon you could come and sit on the bench for us on Sunday? And I said, yeah, that'd be great. And, I was obviously thrilled at the request. So he put me on the bench, and once the heat came out of the game, I can't remember who it was against. I think it was against Polonia or something. He put me on, and I scored, and I suppose that's what really kicked off my career. So
happy days scoring on your debut. Yes.
I would then be asked to attend the following week. And again, the heat had come out of the game. He'd put me on, and I'd make an impact. And it all started from there. Yeah. So I finished my HSC or VCE year, and I was offered a return to Juventus. But at the end of that year, I also was offered through the Youth World Cup that was played in Australia in 1981, the ability to go to Italy and train with whatever club I wanted. And the reason that came about was that when the World Cup was played here, Italy was based here for a while, and I was asked to go and actually train with them just as an extra, not as a, just as an extra, as a prop. And again, the coach of the Italian youth team had me there, and he asked me to come back the next day. And as it turned out, I ended up turning up there 3 or 4 times. And at the end of it, he said, if ever you want to come to Italy, just let me know, and I'll tee you up, a training stint with whoever you want. I thought, wow, that's good. So that was 81. 82 was the year I spoke about there with Tony Boggi, allowing me to play a few senior games off the bench with Juventus. Did my VC year, and I thought, get to Italy. So rang Aconcha, and he teed me up a stint with AS Roma. So I was fortunate enough at the end of my HSC year to go and train with their youth team for a few months, and played alongside Giuseppe Giannini, who ended up captaining Italy, Tovaglieri, a couple of other players that played Serie A for many, many years. And Giannini actually used to take me home on his Vespa. So hell of a good bloke, because their training facility is just outside of Rome.
Yeah.
He'd take me into the city after training on the back of his Vespa, and he was already like a bit of a god there,
Yes.
Beautiful looking young fella. And so he dropped me off and picked me up the next day, and I did that for a couple of months. And during that time, I got my offer from Melbourne Uni to come back to Australia and study. And that is what I wanted to do, because I just wanted to get something under my belt.
Yep.
I could have stayed there in the youth team, not necessarily playing, obviously, anything in the seniors or anything like that. Romeo Benetti was the coach at the time. And I could have remained there, but I thought, no, I want to get this degree under my belt. And so I came back to Australia and started my degree. And that's when I started playing regular senior football with Juventus in 1983. And I was able to combine those first few years with my study. And as it turns out, then the NSL, the national team, and but I made sure that I got that degree under my belt, because there's no guarantees in sport. As I say.
How good's that? I mean, you probably would have been a very popular lad there at Melbourne Uni, studying your degree and being part of the Brunswick Juventus first 11. Was it? Were you the type at uni that would pop in and pop out of that campus, or would you hang around the?
Look, it was more in and out, because the evenings there'd be training. I'd go in there for the lectures, and then whatever time I'd have left, I'd try and cram in whatever study I could.
Yeah.
I was more the type that sort of popped in and out.
Type. Yep.
But you're right. It was. There was a bit of recognition there, I suppose, at the time, particularly once I started making national team and etc.
Tell us about some of the lads in that those early years at Brunswick Juventus. So 83, 84, obviously 1985, you guys had a fantastic year. But tell us about the early years building up to the championship winning side. Some of the characters that are in the dressing room.
Yeah, I mean, the characters we had in that team, you know, I was just a kid, and Mickey P had come across, Pella had come across, Mehmet had come across as well,
Yes.
and they were sort of breaking into the team as well at the time. But we had, you know, a skipper in Brian Brown, who was, you know, our leader. You know, had a tremendous career in Scotland. We had Robbie Cullen, who was a renowned NSL winger who had come across from Preston. Players like John Dowie, who had played an FA Cup for Fulham. You know, unfortunately, John's no longer with us, but the sort of bloke that, you know the expression white line fever? I mean, JD just had this incredible white line fever. The minute he crossed that white line, didn't matter what was in his way, he was just like a wrecking ball. But he had an incredible amount of skill as well. And, you know, we had these sorts of players, Richard Miranda, Paul Wade, Joe Sweeney, all established players, although Wadey was still establishing himself at the time, but these more experienced players, they took us under their wing, and you know, there was no shit with those guys. If you know, if you did something at training, you know, they'd make sure that they'd let you know they were there. You know, they had the British sort of influence about their game, and you know, you'd often be left, you know, after a tackle with studs in your shins, and you'd be plucking them out after training. But those boys let you know they were there. But really, look, those years we learnt to just protect ourselves, because the game was pretty tough. There was a lot of British influence here, so us local boys who'd sort of grown up through the juniors and, you know, wanting to do pirouettes and that sort of, there was none of that. You know, you did that sort of stuff, as I say, the boys would let you know. So the early days was just learning to protect ourselves. Me especially, I used to cop a lot of attention on the pitch, and you know, always end up on the other side of the railing for, you know, through tackles or whatever. But you know, I really learnt to protect myself. A coach, and you know, we can talk about coaches, but you know, one coach who taught me to do that very well was Len McHenry. Not that I was a big supporter of his style of play, but that's one thing he certainly did do with me. He taught me how to protect myself, and yeah, just survive as kids in a fairly tough league at the time.
So you obviously are building up, and it sort of it comes up to this crescendo in 1985, where does it feel like yesterday that you won that title? Is it? Can you remember it? So walk me through. Walk us through for the large Italian community here in Melbourne, who would still remember those days very fondly.
Well, for us, it was
85 winning side.
Yeah, for us, it was a bit of a dream, really, because we'd just come straight out of State League. 1983, we finished our final season in State League. We were promoted into the NSL in 1984. We had a pretty good start to our NSL career. We had John Margaritis there, who was a real character of a coach, a real character. And, you know, we still laugh these days when we get together about some of the expressions he had. And, you know, he had this way of, whenever we'd travel interstate, he'd not that he would put players down, but he would always look at the negatives of the opposite team, and he'd adjust his tactics accordingly. But, you know, for example, if we went into Brisbane, he'd say, these boys in Brisbane, they're not soccer players. You know, they like to, you know, in his Greek accent, he'd say they'd like fishing, they like smoking, they like drinking, they got the Sheilas, they like surfing. They're not soccer players, you know. So he used to get into our head about the opposition and the fact that they weren't really there focused on their game. They had other had other sort of focuses. And so he had this brilliant way of preparing us psychologically that way. But then he also had this incredible ability to adjust our game to suit the opposition. And that's why I suppose they called him the old fox, because he would tweak accordingly. And so 84, first year, I think we ended up in the top 5, but we crashed out. And then second year in the NSL was our big year. And at the end of our first year, I remember the club was looking for a real hard defender. And I remember one night at the end of training, Tony Schiavello, who was our president at the time, he came up to me with Joe Caruso, who was our team manager, and he said, "Andrew, we just want to let you know one thing, mate." And I said, "What?" He goes, "We've bought Peter Lewis for you, so he doesn't kick you anymore." And I said, "Mate, fantastic! What an acquisition!" And Pete, another tremendous leader in the team. A right back who just had this incredible strength, and he'd score the odd incredible goal as well. But, another one of this leadership group that we all looked up to for inspiration, Eddie Campbell, another inspirational fullback. He was a left fullback, really, really skilled fullback. So they, John Margaritis was able to just refine the team a little bit and bring in some strength where we needed it. And we ended up having this incredible year. And at a personal level, it ended up unfortunate for me because I remember scoring the winning goal in the quarterfinal against Heidelberg at Olympic Park, and chipping Jeff over. And just in the motion of chipping Jeff over at full speed, I tore my quad. And I missed the semi and I missed the final. And the club did everything to try and get me back on the pitch. And I think they even took me to the Rialta, to some witch doctor there, and injected me with some steroids into a muscle, which is a real no-no, but that's how desperate they were. And I was to get playing, but I didn't pull through. But what an incredible season. We ended up in the final. We played Sydney City over 2 legs, and Fabin Cantalupo, he's another one. I mean, I haven't even mentioned Fab. He's one of the local boys who, again, a hell of a character, great guy to have around the club, really, really good for team spirit. Fab scored 2 goals, one in each final against City to secure the NSL championship for 1985. So, another boy who's come through the system. He actually came through the Brunswick system, and was able to make his mark on that year by scoring probably the 2 most important goals the club had scored in its national history in our game here. So, after 2 years on top of the world for us, so amazing, absolutely amazing. But again, we had this incredible group of guys. This wily fox of a coach who had his own way, mixed in with all this local talent. Fantastic. So I'll never forget it. Very privileged.
Yes, and the following year, I think you get called up for your first national team squad. Is 86? 86,
I think it was. Yeah.
So what was that
21.
like? What was that like? Getting called up into the national team and getting the jersey, thrown at you, and then standing up in that, listening to the national anthem. Again,
it was all like a dream, because a couple of years before we were just playing junior soccer around here in Port Melbourne, and it all happened really, really quickly. Absolutely pinching myself with how it was all going, but I was trying to enjoy it as much as possible. Putting on the green and gold jersey, I'd have to say, is probably the most satisfying thing I've ever done in my sporting career at a personal level.
Yep.
Just an incredible feeling, just putting that green and gold over your head for the first time. Incredible. But, you know, we had, there were two camps at the time. There was the Melbourne camp and there was the Sydney camp. And the Adelaide boys would come to Melbourne, and basically the Sydney and Queensland boys would train in Sydney. John Markovitz would take the training here. And, you know, we had a lot of fun with training as well, because there was this thing that Frank Arrock had introduced at a particular pre-season. It was actually a pre-season, but we were doing it as a national team. And it was, we had to run increments of 8 kilometres. And I think we started off with 8 1,000-metre runs. Yes. And then it was 20 400-metre runs. And then it was 80 100-metre run. It was sort of all in increments. And this, we had to do 8 kilometres each day. And we used to get that tired at the end of it that we'd all retire back. A number of us had come back to my place, and we just have bacon and eggs and just sit there and just chill out and rest for the next 8 kilometres the next day. But there was one particular session where Paul Wade, he pulled in the 100-metre cones, and when John Markovitz wasn't looking, he pulled them in about, 15 metres, maybe 20 metres. So it was about 80 metres. And anyway, we were going through the motions, and we were down to our last 2 or 3 80-metre sprints, and we were absolutely knackered at this stage. So John Markovitz, and he was a pisser. He'd have his Australian tracksuit on, and he'd have shorts, and then he'd have the suit socks and the suit moccasins on with his tracksuit. He was an absolute pisser. And he goes, "Boys, okay, the last 2 or 3, I want you to give it absolutely everything." So as I say, Wadey had pulled the cones in a bit, and we take off. We did the first one. We sort of built up speed. Second one, and then the last one, we said, right, we've got to give it everything we got. So Ernie Tapai and I were fairly quick, and we did the final one in blistering pace. And there's John Markovitz on the stopwatch, and
you've broken the world record.
He's scratching his head, and he's going. We're all around him. We're sort of puffing and panting, and he's going, "Boys, what's the world record?" I think Zinni and Tapai have just broken it.
That's brilliant.
Great story, and we still tell it these days. And a lot of fun, and that was all sort of part of it. While we were actually getting in the process of representing our country, we were actually having some fun along the way. But look,
apparently, so Frank just thought of this idea off the top of his head. These idea of repeats.
None of us
forget about load, right? Training load. Now the professional players, do assessments. How you feeling? This, that. No. We're gonna run you until you throw up. Congratulations. Welcome to the Socceroos.
None of us to this day knows where he got that 8 kilometre increment training session. So interesting. We were pretty fit by the end of it, I have to say, and we've got a world record to boot. So that was awesome. Yeah. But getting back to your question, so that was around 86 or so. First game was in New Zealand. First kick I ever had, I hit the bar. So that really got my confidence up. And in the second game, I came on as a sub and scored my first goal with my first touch as well. So my confidence was sky high with the national team, particularly with those early couple of games.
And so you're coming into national team selection. You're doing really well at Juventus. And 1987, you get the accolade of Player of the Year. So do you feel that year was your best year, or is it Where do you think you played your best? When did you think you played your best football?
At a personal level, I think I played my best football at the end of my career. By that stage, I had been through 13 seasons in the NSL. I'd been under a number of coaches. John Markovitz, Tony Bodgie, McKendry. There was Andon Donchevsky at Preston, Ian Dobson, John Gardner, Frank Arrock, obviously with the national team. And with each of those, they were able to, I think, just add the spice to my game that probably I didn't have as a really young kid.
Yes.
And I think by the end of my career, and I've said this to a number of people who have asked me the same question, towards the end of my career, I think I was playing the best football I ever played. I wasn't playing with the national team at the time. But I honestly think that that's when I was at my best. The 1987 year, yes, I won the Player of the Year, but look, I had a fantastic team around me, and without those boys, I would not have got those votes in each game. Simple as that. I'm at the attacking end, and unless you're getting service, unless your defence is tight, you're not going to feature prominently. So I was able to, obviously, in the eyes of the people voting, I was at the end of all this service. So without those boys, I would not have had the year that I did. Was it my best year? I don't think it was my best year. But obviously others thought I had a great year. And look, I've got no one to thank except for my teammates for it. Yep. So,
that's very humbling. It's great. It's great words. So, in your time at Brunswick, who did you typically room with? Who were the roomies that you?
Who did I typically room with? With the national team, it was Paul Wade. So we inevitably roomed together. And Wade, he didn't like rooming with me because I always used to like to sleep. So whenever we were back in our room, I'd just sleep, and he'd just want to knock the ball up against the wall or whatever. And but typically Wadey, Mickey P, I think obviously given the relationship we had, I think Mem a couple of times. So we didn't really have regulars, although with the national team it would have been mostly with Wadey, I think. Yeah.
Okay. And obviously that Brunswick Juventus connection there coming through as well. So it's close. You get to do you get some choice in the rooming situation, or you just get thrown in with?
Normally not. Normally, I think the coaching staff know who the relationships best work with, and they generally leave that up to the boys. Actually, Joe Sweeney was one that I did room with, and it reminds me of a story that disastrous day in Brisbane. We played Brisbane City, and in the morning we got up. We got there the night before. We slept over, and we're coming into breakfast. And as Joe Sweeney and I walk in, Brian Brown, who was our captain, and Joe Caruso, our team manager, said, "Boys, there's you've been asked to go on to World of Sport today." And there's a taxi out the front. So they'll take you to World of Sport, then they'll bring you back and you can have your breakfast. And we sort of go, oh, yeah, World of Sport, that sounds fantastic. So anyway, we hop in the taxi. And in Brisbane, the television stations are on top of a mountain. There's about 3 of them all in a row. And the taxi driver drops us off at Channel 10 or something. So we get out of the taxi, we go in and we go, oh, Andrew Zinni, Joe Sweeney from Brunswick Juventus, we're on World of Sport. And I said, oh, no, that's up the road. That's the next TV station. No, but we were dropped off here. They said, no, we don't do World of Sport. So we literally walked up to the next television station. I think it was Channel 7. And we walk in, Joe Sweeney, Andrew Zinni, we're here for the World of Sport. We've got an interview. No, we don't do World of Sport. It could be the next one. It could be Channel 9. So we look at each other and we go, something going on here. So anyway, we walk to the next television station, and we get to the reception. Andrew Zinni, Joe Sweeney from Brunswick Juventus. We're here for World of Sport. We've got an interview, and they look at the thing at the roster, and you're not here, but come in anyway. So we walk in, and then we speak to the floor manager, and Andrew Zinni, Joe Sweeney, we're here for the interview on World of Sport, and he looks at his itinerary, and you don't figure here. You're actually not part of the show today. And we go, well, no, we are. We've been told that we're literally standing behind the camera, almost getting interviewed. We almost convinced these guys. Anyway, we'd been had. Oh. We looked at each other and we've gone, oh, holy shit. So
no breakfast as well. They make you go without breakfast. Oh, no.
We go outside. There's no taxi.
Oh.
There were no mobile phones, so we had to go back in and ask the reception to ring a taxi. So, and anyway, we get back a couple of hours later, and they were having the team meeting at that stage. They'd already had breakfast and everything.
Yeah.
And Joe and I walk in, and all the boys are just sitting there clapping, and Joe Caruso's clapping. Team manager is clapping, and
responsible type, huh?
Oh,
wow! So what did you guys do to deserve that? So were you just the two guys that get picked on?
It was just a prank. It was just a prank. Wow. But that's not where the day ended, because we ended up playing Brisbane City that day, and I'll try and make this fairly quick. I'd scored a couple, and I was making a run into the box for a hat trick. Okay. So I was on my hat trick, and I looked at the keeper, and I went to place the ball, and then from behind, Luch Fabrizio from Brisbane City pulls me down, and I was that penalty, but I was that aggro that I got sent. I turned around, and I had a go at him. I got sent off, and he got sent off.
Oh, no.
So anyway, I'm walking in. I'd never been sent off before. I don't think I'd ever been sent off after that either. So it was just a hell of a day. We had waited for these tracksuits to come out of Italy, these white Diodora tracksuits, for many months, and they arrived for this particular trip. They were these beautiful tracksuits. Anyway, I walk into the dressing room, and there's this kid pinching all our tracksuits. And I was that aggro. I started chasing him, and I went out the back of the grandstand, and then I was about to start sprinting, and I thought, I better stop here, because the day has been a shocker, and I'm not going to end up getting laughed at by the crowd looking at this idiot who's just been sent off running around the stadium chasing a kid with some tracksuits.
Well, so, you would have. I'd give him 300 yards. You're still chasing down that. You were that quick. Unbelievable! No. What a story.
Yeah, so what a day! What a day that was. Anyway,
so did you keep all the tracksuits? Did you keep all the tracksuits?
He kept he got about 7 or 8 of them. So my one went missing, and I think there were only about 5 or 6 left by the time he
team uniform.
So he was in there. He was in there. I'd actually caught him in there pinching these bloody tracksuits.
Oh wow! So team uniform's gone, right? So
gone. We'd waited 3 months for him. Yeah. This is about 6 games into the season at this stage as well.
Oh, funny stuff. So you in 1989 you make your way over to Preston. How did that transfer come about?
How did that transfer come about? Interesting question, because at that stage we had, as Brunswick Juventus, been relegated from the NSL, and there was a playoff game, Preston and us at the Heidelberg Village. Massive crowd that day. We lost. We got relegated. From that game, Andon Dodchevsky, who was the coach of Preston, I think got in touch with me that week and asked me whether I would like to join Preston, because he was going to build this fantastic squad, which he did, and we can come to that. Whether I would join the following year. And unfortunately, I had a crippling groin injury that I played with for the last part of that season, and I was playing on anti-inflammatories on Voltarens and Naprosins for the better part of the second half of the season. I got to a point where I couldn't actually lift my legs beyond sort of knee height unless I was taking these anti-inflammatories. So I said to him at the time, I'd be interested. However, I'm booked in to go for a groin operation with what was called inguinal intraction syndrome. It was pioneered by a specialist here in Richmond. Mr. Myers was his name. So I had to go in for this specific procedure, 2 big cuts, and I said, look, Andon, I'll just see how this all goes, whether I'm going to be able to play. Obviously, there's the Juventus situation, what's happening with all that, albeit we've been relegated. So as it turned out, I had the operation, and I ended up signing. And Andon did build a tremendous squad that at the end of that year in recruiting. It was John Markovsky as well. There was Warren Spink, myself. He already had a nucleus of a great squad there with, Jacko and Roodhouse and Phil Trianides and, a lot of these established players. I think George Zaleski was already making his mark at that point. Steve Smith, fantastic nucleus already. So, I joined that year and had my first of 5 years at Preston, fantastic years at Preston, a great club. Absolutely loved the club, loved the people there, and really enjoyed my 5 years there. And Andon had an incredible amount of faith in me to the point where he actually played me as a central midfielder for the year. And he allowed me to my directions were, Andrea, he used to call me, you do whatever you want. He had this incredible faith in me, and he just gave me the freedom to play wherever I wanted to go, pretty much as a central midfielder. So I was no longer a winger or a striker, central midfield. And we had a great year that year. Unfortunately, we didn't deliver the on the I suppose the potential that team had. We did make the finals. We got a fair way in. We didn't get there in the end, but 5 incredible years at Preston, and I've got very, very fond memories of Connor Reserve and my time there. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, very passionate people.
Absolutely
faithful, and having those chants of Makedonia, just sing constantly.
Yes.
It was quite intimidating. BT Connor Reserve is quite a big pitch as well. Quite wide.
I think you're right. The fellow that would just chant that Makedonia, I think, was Sasha Ognanovsky's father.
Yes,
and who passed away. I read recently, or over the last couple of years, and just that baritone voice we'd hear through.
Yes.
Yeah, another fellow that was recruited that you've God Almighty is Robbie Markovitz. Robbie, another tremendous player. So the club really, really, really wanted to do well, but as I say, we won the Gold Cup. I think we won the pre-season cup. We got a fair way, into the finals on a number of those years, but we just couldn't quite deliver on the potential that team really had. Yeah.
The one player that who obviously went on to represent. You mentioned his name that I want to speak about that I think doesn't get talked about as much as I think he deserves is Warren Spink. And he was absolutely just quality. And you obviously crossed over some time. He played for a number of clubs in the NSL. But talk to me about what he was like as a character. What
I've got a story about Sid.
Yes.
But first, I'll talk to him about him as a person first.
Yes.
As a player first. Tremendous striker. In the A-League these days, who would you liken him to? I'd liken him to. He had the quality of finish of, say, a Bruno Fornaroli, where he could just create that meter and just get a look in and be able to place the ball in the either corner of the net. But where I'd differentiate Sid from Fornaroli is that Sid was also able to grab the ball, look at a player and just run at him, and just take him on. So Warren was the complete striker. And we don't see many of these strikers coming through our system anymore. He wasn't a big stature, but he could hold the ball up. He could create that little bit of space and get a shot in. Clinical, absolutely clinical finisher, but also had the ability to take on players, which he had the full package as a striker. Yes. So tremendous player, but one little story. Well, a little story.
He was also a character, so that's why I want to hear his story.
He was a character. So we were playing Marconi. In Sydney, and we were travelling up. We're in the plane, and we had the Australian cricket team in the plane as well. They were sitting up the back, and it's a fairly long story, so I'll try and make it fairly quick. But I was sitting next to the club president at the time, Jimmy Trojczewski, who signed me with Andon Donchevsky. I was sitting with Jimmy. We're all sitting together. Australian cricket team at the back. We come to touchdown over Sydney Airport, and the plane flies back up in the air, does a right-hand turn, heads towards New Zealand for about 25 minutes, half an hour, comes back around, down to land again, and then comes up again.
Oh no, they're the worst.
And during the whole trip, or during that whole experience, nothing was said by the captain or the cabin crew or anything, and everyone's sort of panicking about what the hell's going on. I had Jimmy Trojczewski next to me, and he used to have his heavy Macedonian accent. He used to call me Andrea as well. He goes, Andrea, this is not good. This is not good. he said, I'm not comfortable about what's going on. He started sweating. He started saying his prayers.
Yes.
At one stage, he pulled out a piece of paper and he started writing. I said, Jimmy, what are you doing, mate? He's going, I'm writing my will. I'm writing my will. And he said, if I die, can you please tell my wife and kids that I love them? And I look at him, I go, Jimmy, mate, if you die, there's a pretty good chance that I'm going to die as well, mate. But anyway, Sid was sitting behind me. And during this whole period, there was an announcement that came out after the second time that we'd come around to say that they had confirmation from the traffic control tower that the landing gear on the starboard side hadn't locked in, and we were going to go into emergency landing procedure. So Sid, all of a sudden, he reaches
the life jacket.
He puts the life jacket on and he starts blowing the whistle. And he starts doing all these emergency procedure things. And I mean, he was probably the only one on the plane that kept us sane, because everyone else
was freaking out,
their prayers, or there was a queue to the toilet that was a mile long, people crying. And here's Sid with the life jacket on, starting to blow the whistle and doing all these emergency
he was ready, just in case he had to pull the ripcord. Oh, that's funny.
It was hilarious. It was absolutely.
Yes.
If it wasn't for him, I think we would have all ended up in a bit like Jimmy that day,
Yeah, that's.
But just.
So did they end up getting the landing gear down? Did it land safely?
So we come down and we're looking out through the window and we can see all the fire engines and ambulances and everything, and somehow the pilot comes in on the side, and I don't know, I still to this day don't know how he did it, but he sort of was able to flick the side of the plane where the landing gear hadn't come out, and he pulled the plane up really, really quick, and we all went into this emergency thing, and we made it, and we got out of the airport there, and suffice to say that we were going through and all the television cameras are there, and Preston Makedonia walked straight through, and there's the Australian cricket team getting interviewed. How was it? So it was quite fun.
So the microphones for the cricketers, right? So
not for us, but that's okay. We had to get to Marconi. We were actually late for the game that day, which they were.
How did the result go?
Oh geez, I think we drew. I think we drew that.
All right, okay. Well, I'll call that a good day, right? So
good day.
You don't die on a plane, and you get a point away from home. Happy days.
Absolutely. And Sid's blowing the whistle.
A fantastic story. I needed to ask about, and the other one is maybe a comment about a young John Markovsky, who
Jonesy.
Arguably be the most, I'll say it, the most talented potential of a person. And you would have seen him in those years where it really could have been anything. What did you see in John when he was with you at Preston?
Okay. What I didn't see, I never saw him finish one training session, that's for sure. Jonesy would always end up with a sore ankle or a twisted sock, or there was always an excuse. You'd never see him complete a session. But in terms of talent, yeah, absolutely extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary talent. And, you know, some of those goals he scored as a kid, you know, 35, 40 metres out. Even in my time at Preston, some of the goals that I saw him score there, amazing. Some of them were combinations that I did with him, and I see every now and again on Facebook. Just inspirational, and a real crowd favourite because he had that X factor that we don't see much of these days in the A-League. We don't see much of we haven't seen it for a long, long time. There was more of it in the NSL, I think. But I agree. I think incredible amount of talent that probably we didn't see the finished product of what it could have been.
Yeah.
You know?
So I mean, it goes to show, and regardless of what level you are, right? Football requires all areas of discipline, order, attitude, diet, commitment, willing to put in the extras, all these things. If you can couple those things with the talent, because there's plenty of kids with talent, right? I mean, Jonesy had oodles of it. Too much.
He had too much of it. He had absolutely too much of it.
If you had to look back on your attribute, because I remember you could get around plays, you could find that space. If there was an opportunity to, you know, ball's 15 yards ahead of you and two players are running, you and a defender running for it, I could put my house on it that you're going to get the ball. Did you work on your pace outside of the game, or was it always within training, or did you do like better running technique, gait work or sprint work to get quicker? I think for me it was just natural ability, and it could be because of my physique. I'm not built in. I'm not heavy. I'm not a heavy build. I'm fairly slight build for my height. But I was always quick as a kid. I did do athletics as a kid. Okay. I did do that in the off season, but that was not to become quicker. It was just to keep my fitness up. Perhaps there might have been some impact as a result of doing athletics through the summer in those days. But I've always had that ability, like Mickey P's had that ability to one touch, ping a ball 40 metres. Jonesy scoring goals from 40 metres out. I'm sure he was doing that as a 8-9-year-old. So a lot of that is, I think for me at a personal level, was natural ability. People say to me, how do I make my kids quicker? How do I make my kids quick? And my standard response is that you can make your kid a little bit quicker, but if he's not quick, naturally he will never be, he or she will never be quick. You need to be born with that innate ability that, your Joneses and Mickey P's and these sorts of guys had. That you're just born with it. So I was fortunate enough to be born with it, and it formed a big part of my game. Fantastic. And the if you had to cap off any memories looking back, either as a Socceroo or for one of your club teams, which are the ones that sort of stick in the mind? You think, okay, yeah, if I could relive that moment, I'd like to go back to that one.
Well, obviously winning the NSL championship in '85, a huge achievement as a team, particularly second year in the National League. And then at a personal level, as I said before, that feeling of putting the green and gold over your head for the first time, I don't think I'll ever, well, obviously I'll never experience that again, but I don't think I'll ever experience that just raw emotion, you know, just looking at the shirt and putting it over your head. And I think that is something that I'll never forget. Definitely.
And obviously you've got a son who's continued on in your footsteps and playing at the highest possible level now. What advice would you give to that 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old wanting to get the most out of their football?
Yeah, I think, you know, obviously believe in yourself. That's something that Frank Arrock was able to instill in all the players that he coached. He had this incredible ability to instill confidence in a player and in a team. He was a real motivator. You know, believe in yourself, firstly, believe in yourself and work hard. You don't, I suppose, if you're not going to make it in something, the last thing you want to say to yourself when you're older is, oh, I really didn't give it a go. Yeah. So if you can believe in yourself and work hard at your game, you're going to give yourself every chance of making it at the highest level or whatever potential level you have. Yeah. So that's all I can say. Obviously, you know, having the ball at your feet as much as possible. I'm a great believer in, particularly in junior development, and I'd help out with my kids' teams as they were coming through, is just maximising the number of touches kids have at a session. There's nothing worse than a kid sitting there for an hour and a half and getting 5 touches of the ball. You know, after an hour and a half, that kid has to have hundreds and hundreds of touches of the ball. And even away from the game is doing that on their own, because I'm a great believer in whatever you get into, whatever you put into something is ultimately what you get out of it.
Fantastic words of wisdom. It's been an absolute pleasure, Mr. Andrew Zinni. Thank you very much for your contribution to Australian football, and we wish you all the very best.
Pleasure, Sasha, and great talking to you, mate, and keep up the great work. Thank you very much.
Hey guys, we've come to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to our wonderful guest. If you like this type of content and would like to see more, how about you hit the like and subscribe button? And have a fantastic day.